The Big Picture is an opinion show about literally whatever I want it to be about, which means I get to play favorites, promote ideas and outlooks I share, and offer my take on matters of the day up to and including the realm of politics.
You've got a nice co-star here.
Good.
Yes.
However, it's not necessarily what I'd term a political show, and while I don't necessarily steer away from the subject, I also, believe it or not, do not go looking for it either, not by editorial mandate or because I'm chasing ratings, mostly because I think it's not necessary. Politics is just shorthand for working systems of power, principles, and status within a given sphere of influence after all, so it's kind of always there as a part of everything, because if you're talking about where something fits or doesn't fit into the world or the culture, you are inherently talking about the politics of the thing, whether I run that Funny or Die shoulder hit clip again or not. I'm gonna run it again though. Anyway, here in the US last weekend we had 2 terrible mass shootings in less than 24 hours, which is, even for us, a lot. And in the deadlier of the 2, a guy went into a Walmart and opened fire after posting a rambling manifesto about white supremacy and racism and repeating a lot of ugly language that's not super far removed from stuff certain right-wing politicians and media figures say on the internet a lot, and that's bad, right? Yes, I don't think it's super controversial to just blanket statements say, that's bad, the other shooter person, also bad, anyone who randomly murders people, bad. This whole scene is just unequivocally f***ed up and bad. Can we at least agree on that it's all just bad? Okay, so that's the serious part. Tried to keep it short, but it needed to be there for context, so now we can move on to the stupid part.
Movies are weird.
So if you watch a lot of movie trailers or just go to the movies a lot, you've probably seen the promos and trailers for an upcoming horror film called The Hunt, seemingly a mashup of the classical Most Dangerous Game scenario with modern sensibilities of the Purge movies, in which a group of random individual strangers without much discernible backstory beyond apparently all being poor working class wake up and find themselves dropped in a field on the hunting grounds of a mansion estate to act as the human prey for a hunting party comprised of paying customers who are, of course, ultra-rich 1% elites. So, okay, of course we've seen this premise before, but it looked like a decent version of it, and amusingly comes from Craig Zobel, who's done some solid work before and was actually one of the co-creators of Homestar Runner. Did you know that? Well, now you know that.
Yo!
But the trailers didn't really give much of an indication that there was anything really different about this version. Sympathetic rural American blue-collar coated good guys, icy posh champagne and marble countertops rich people bad guys, tough Sarah Connor / Ellen Ripley / Captain Marvel / Katniss Everdeen Mama Bear heroines so that ambiguous feminism can hopefully cancel out ambiguous gun fetishism.
You picked the wrong game.
Lady, you're crazy.
Save file, send to printer. But, as it turned out, that apparently wasn't the case. In fact, The Hunt was supposedly packing a somewhat diabolical moral twist to its hero-villain setup somewhere within its narrative that the original ads were designed to obscure, but because the studio started to get cold feet about the implications of how that twist was going to play out in a just-for-fun movie with lots of shooting deaths after a weekend of tragic real-world shooting deaths, the entertainment press, starting with The Hollywood Reporter, started reporting on the specific reasons why, and gave away the game, which... Okay, look, I don't actually think this counts as a spoiler anymore because it's been reported on everywhere and now it's the thing everyone knows about this movie, but just in case, maybe you don't follow movie news, hadn't heard of this before, and now want to pull your chute and remain surprised on your own... Okay, so the big hook to The Hunt is that we find out at some point that the most dangerous game, wealthy hunters, regular folk prey dynamic has an additional socio-political dimension in this version. The hunting party, at least this particular scenario, it's not clear if this is a one-off or a hostile type franchise situation, aren't just rich people, they're rich, self-identified liberal progressives, i.e. people with do-gooder politics who give to charities, support environmentalism, believe in all the right causes, generally see themselves as default good guys in the 21st century forward-thinking sense, and they've selected their victims specifically because they are, in their daily lives, racists, belong to hate groups, anti-choice activists, polluters, post hate speech on the internet, or involved in right-wing radical stuff, essentially because they see them as bad guys, and that makes hunting them for sport okay, maybe even correct.
Jesus, read a coffee table book!
So, that's pretty dark, right? I mean, who knows how it's executed, i.e. how much of a surprise is it? When does the reveal come in? Does one side get played more or less righteously than the other? Is anyone really not who they seem to be? But in terms of an elevator pitch, taking one of the cleanest class-conscious good versus evil premises in genre fiction and giving it a hard, sharp extra twist of topical morality flipping designed to force half the audience to maybe sympathize with the otherwise obvious villains and or empathize with ostensible heroes they'd otherwise hate, or vice versa, though really, it's more like 2 sets of not even a quarter of people and 50% of who the hell even knows, but whatever. But that probably would have pissed a lot of people off who shouldn't have been that pissed off, because letting South Park and Bill Maher both stay on the air about 15 years past their sell-by dates has made Americans unable to understand how satire actually works. Anyway, we don't get to find out anymore because Blowing the Twist was in the real news, and that meant Fox News got to start talking about it, and
the film is about wealthy liberals hunting and killing deplorables on a reserve.
And to do a film at this particular time, listen, freedom of speech, freedom of art, culture, I like that. I like people being able to express themselves. But there's this responsibility to culture. How many kids are responsive? Who knows who'll kidnap who, a group of people, and say, let's have fun?
that's Robert Davey from The Goonies, by the way.
I am so tired.
Anyway, since it was on Fox, the president got mad about it on Twitter.
You talk about racist. Hollywood is racist. What they're doing with the kind of movies they're putting out, it's actually very dangerous for our country. What Hollywood is doing is a tremendous disservice to our country.
And now the studio has pulled the movie, and it's not coming out as scheduled. No one knows when it will, and because of this, pretty much everyone now knows about the big surprise twist of the thing, prompting a massive outcry from the internet's dedicated army of free speech warriors, which... Huh. Well, how about that? Okay, so aside from this being a terrible precedent, whether you agree with or particularly care about The Hunt or not, does anyone else notice how stupid this kind of backlash against this kind of movie actually is? And I mean, aside from the perennially obvious fact that when you try to contain a controversial movie of this type, all you generally do is guarantee that when it does get released, a low-budget August throwaway title no one was particularly psyched for becomes an event with a bunch of eyeballs on it when it does get released, and maybe even as a see this to support free speech boutique release from another distributor, and then wind up as an evergreen cult item profit driver on home video, so good job. But beyond that, as I noted above, has no one else seen any politics, movie, or TV controversy of the last several decades and thus knows exactly how this is going to play out, or is it only me? Because I can tell you with very strong confidence that whatever the actual intent of the film and filmmakers was, the audience that ended up getting mad at The Hunt sight unseen because Fox told them to, would very likely have ended up deciding that the movie was actually on their side and the guys reminiscent of them in the movie were actually the heroes regardless of where the plot actually goes. And plenty of people on the other side would have had the same knee-jerk reaction in the opposite direction and condemned the movie, also likely missing the same point entirely, see previous, i.e. satire Americans are bad at. I mean, hell, some of us still don't realize Starship Troopers was a comedy.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
Dumbest and most offensive to the intelligence of all, though, is the claim that yanking this movie is about being sensitive to the victims of gun violence. I mean, really now. You could make a plausible argument for that, sure, but no one is, because there's a ton of other movies out there with guns in them, and no one is talking about pulling Hobbs and Shaw, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Spider-Man, Crawl, Stuber, John Wick 3, or any of a bunch of other currently in release films with guns. Only the one that had scary headlines and the president got mad about on Twitter. And it's also not like there hadn't already been a lot of gun violence in America and elsewhere in the world when the script for The Hunt was picked up by the studio in 2018. Look, it's their movie, they can release it however they like, but I hope anyone can see this is bad news and exactly the wrong way to handle any of this. It's not even really a free speech thing, it's a common sense thing. How ridiculous is it that we've now had the beginning, middle, and end of a controversial movie gets pulled story where the movie never came out, so the entire discussion is what people think they might have gotten offended about. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.